honestly, I love the name so much because it's one of the few names that Cedric just allowed.
Right.
You know?
He usually fights those dumb names.
Right, because, I mean, it's, because of Nexus of Fate, it's got the alliteration with Nexus of Gates. It's this Guild Gates-based strategy, obviously, featuring both the Gate synergies, Gates Ablaze and whatnot, but also using Wilderness Reclamation alongside Expansion and Explosion and Nexus of Fate.
Berkenbile won the role. Is it Guildgate for turn 1 and 2? Austin Yoast, a Sky Marcher Aspirant was the turn 1 play. Turn 2 will deploy an Adanto Vanguard to join it. Gives him a little bit of insulation against something like a Gates Ablaze with an untapped land this turn.
Oh, absolutely. This is an ideal start for Austin Yoast. He wants to apply as much pressure as possible in a short amount of time, and also wants to get to a point where he doesn't have to overextend into something like Gates Ablaze, and Adanto Vanguard allows him to do just that.
Third land is a Gateway Plaza for Berkenbile. He'll go to 21 before lava coiling away that Sky March Aspirant. Back on Yoast's side, he'll attack with the Adanto Vanguard. That'll put Berkenbile right back down to 18, and Legion's Landing deployed post-combat.
Now, Plaza, Gateway Plaza, Plaza of Harmony. Plaza of Harmony is the one that I want to talk about because it's this newer addition to the deck that I think really gives the deck legs. Plaza of Harmony, seeing so much play in these decks and has such a huge impact. I mean, we've seen Revitalize in the past, right? People play Revitalize as a cycler that just gains some life, gives you a little bit of a buffer. But Plaza of Harmony is a land that does effectively the same thing, but also lets you double up on any of the colors that you already have access to. It's just this really nice untapped land in a deck that really needs a few, and that needs them ones that can help rebuy lost time because so many of your lands enter the battlefield tapped.
Serious miss for Berkenbile on turn 4. Had the Guild Summit, but no land to go with it. Austin Yoast got to attack with that Adanto Vanguard and Legion's Landing token before playing a second Vanguard. All Berkenbile could do is lava coil the token from the Legion's Landing, and now Yoast is attacking him for 6 and deploying a History of Benalia.
Yeah, this is really where Adanto Vanguard shines over something like Tithe-Taker. Lava Coil in particular is quite strong against Tithe-Taker, and it's pretty poor against Adanto Vanguard. And here, it looks like an attack coming in for 8 life with Berkenbile at 8. So this could just be the end of the game. Berkenbile missed that one crucial land drop, and everything kind of fell apart from there.
Yeah, it was just a second Guild Summit, and then there was a gate for Berkenbile. He drew 2, but as you mentioned, there was just lethal attackers on the table. Yoast isn't going to miss that one. So we're going to go into Game 2 here. Austin Yoast very quickly taking down Game 1. Yeah,
and we're going to talk about sideboarding in a second. If you haven't noticed yet, we have this neat little extension over the broadcast. It's Cardboard Live. The guy over here helping us type up deck lists right now is helping us along, and is the creator of Cardboard Live.
Wilson Hunter.
Cool dude. And also, the extension is quite useful for a number of things. Not only can you check out the deck lists of both the players that are currently on the screen, you can also check standings. At any point when they're up, they're as up-to-date as we can get them. And if you want to check and see how one of your favorite players is doing, or perhaps a friend, you can do that because Cardboard Live is amazing.
Yeah, been a really great tool we've been implementing, and Wilson's working on all kinds of stuff for it too, so you want to definitely keep your eyes on that. It's been an awesome extension so far. We do have sideboards now. Sam Berkenbile down a game. We'll see what he can do for some help in the sideboard for the Nexus of Gates deck. He has 4 negates, not the gate that the deck's named after, but, you know, a gate of sorts. 4 Gatebreaker Ram, 3 Archway Angel, 2 Carnage Tyrant, and 2 Lava Coil.
Talking about thematic.
Yeah. Really just
gate.
On theme.
The gate and no. So negate's not a card you want here, but cards like Gatebreaker Ram and Archway Angel both could potentially come in. Ram does a fine job at stalling out a lot of these cheap creatures from the Azorius aggro side. Plus it has Vigilance, so you get to continually attack as long as your Gatebreaker Ram has enough toughness to survive said combat. Archway Angel is this late-game draw that can give you a huge boost of life and potentially protect you from a big unbreakable formation turn or a History of Benalia pumping all my knights turn. So I like those 7 creatures coming in. Carnage Tyrant, I don't think you really need it. And then probably the 2 Lava will come in as just a bit more interaction. Though, as we saw in Game 1, damage-based interaction not very good against Adanto Vanguard.
Yeah, and for Austin Yoast sideboard, we have 4 Tecatli Honor Guard, 4 Negate, that's where he's going for counter magic, just negates, 4 copies, 3 Ajani Adversary Tyrants, 3 Baffling End, and 1 Deputy at Detention. What do you like here?
So the 4 negates, I think, are a no-brainer. This is the reason why the deck splashes blue. You want negates against decks like Nexus of Gates or the control strategies as a means of interacting with these really powerful instants and sorceries that a mono-white deck would not normally be able to interact with. The 4 copies of Howl Fountain, 4 copies of Glacial Fortress that Austin is choosing to play is specifically for this reason. Aside from that, I think the negates are quite good. The Johnny Adversary of Tyrants can come in because they are a threat you can deploy that give you a bit more pressure when you cast it, while also not being vulnerable to Gates Ablaze, one of the better cards that the Nexus Gates deck can come at you with. And there's a chance that Yoast actually brings in either Baffling End or Deputative Detention as a means of clearing Gatebreaker Rams or those other gate-based creatures that the deck can play.
Yeah, for fans of the creature collection here at Star City Games, it's February now, which means that we are on to Yeti Steady Go. We have playmats and sleeves available for that, as well as player bundles. You can check these out at go.starcitygames.com/creature collection. This is one that you're pretty big on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just the thought of a cute little Yeti just dashing through the snow in a one Yeti sleigh. It's just so cute. And
I like that hat a lot.
Yeah, same. I mean, just a backpack full of stuff, too. Got a tea kettle going on there. Looks like the Yeti stole the flag from the Capture the Flag game that was going on in the town. Yeah, just getting out of here, too. But if you want to get your hands on Yeti Steady Go, either the sleeves, playmat, or both with the player bundle, go to go.starcitygames.com/creature collection right now.
Players shuffling up for game number 2. Actually, both of them on a mulligan already. We'll see where they stick with regard to that.
Now, a lot of people who play aggressive decks kind of lament the mulligan because, sometimes their deck doesn't have enough reach or their cards are not specific enough to really get the job done when you don't have, more copies of them. Like if you mulligan to 6 or mulligan to 5. I actually think the opposite is true. I think that aggro decks tend to flourish whenever they're mulliganing versus the opponent who is playing a slower deck like a Nexus of Gates deck because as the aggressive player, you can actually shrink the amount of time that the game takes so that the decks like Nexus of Gates or control strategies don't have time to draw out of said mulligan. They need to be able to hit land drops up the curve and interact with you at certain points, and all you need to do is continually deploy threats. So if you just have a small amount of lands and a couple threats and just keep casting them, your opponent is under duress, not you.
Both players keeping on 6. Berkenbile started with a Simic Guildgate. Yoast deployed Legion's Landing off of a basic plains. Gruul Guildgate was the second play for Berkenbile. We'll see if Yoast has a follow-up after attacking with the Vampire token. Life total is 21-19 in Yoast's favor. And here is a Stubborn Sentry. Just a 0-3 for now, but that one can get out of hand later.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Yoast, doesn't have the triple 1-drop draw to potentially transform the Legion's Landing. That's always where you want to be as this White Winnie-based Azorius aggro deck. The triple 1-drop draw with Legion's Landing is so strong because once you transform that Legion Landing, not only do you get a burst of or you get the burst of mana from the extra land, but you also gain the ability to start generating a bunch of extra tokens.
Berkenbile's third land was Plaza of Harmonies at 22. Gatebreaker Ram was the play. That one at 2-2, but a 4-4 because of those 2 gates. On Yoast's side, he has Glacial Fortress as a third land. He's going to start with a Dauntless Bodyguard, pair that with a Sentry, and then convoke a Conclave Tribunal, take care of the Ram, attack with the 1-1 Vampire, 22-21 in Yoast's favor. Yeah,
and while you may have said, oh, there's no way Yoast is going to bring in Baffling End, right? And then you realize, well, Gatebreaker Ram is one of the best possible cards the Nexus of Gates can play against a deck like Azorius aggro. Not only is it a creature, so it dodges negate, but it also just allows you to apply pressure to your opponent so they have to overextend into something like Gates Ablaze. Now, we saw Yoast have to burn this Conclave Tribunal, and even if he doesn't have it in his deck right now, he could potentially say, hey, these Gatebreaker Rams are going to be a problem. I need to save those Conclave Tribunals for things like Wilderness Reclamation and Guild Summit, and then just completely change how he sideboards after game 1, or game 2.
Berkenbile played a Guild Summit. This time he did have the land. Azorius Guildgate drew a card on Yoast's side. Pre-combat, there was a History of Benalia. Got the City's Blessing. Came across for a big attack. That's 3, 4, 5, 6. Berkenbile to 15.
Yeah,
Yoast at 22.
Dauntless Escort here is also protecting the Snubhorn Sentry, so it's giving him a little bit of insulation against something like Gates of Blaze, but he also looks like he has an unbreakable formation in hand. So if Berkenbile only has that one way to interact with Austin Yoast's swarm of creatures, there's a chance Yoast goes attack you, hold up unbreakable formation, Nexus of Gates, Sam Berkenbile goes Gates of Blaze. We effectively counter it with our ability, untap, play Banaush Marshal, and attack for the win.
Notably, Yoast did transform that Legion's Landing to a down to the first fort in the previous turn. Berkenbile is going to start his turn with the Securious Root. This one's really powerful when you have Guild Summit. Goes and finds 2 gates and draws 2 cards, and then plays another Izzet Guild Gate for turn, drawing another one. So now 7 lands on the battlefield and a pretty full grip as well.
I mean, we are pretty close to lethal here just with the one unbreakable formation or the Banaush Marshal. The problem is we can't really play both, so there's very little reason to overextend here. We can still attack for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 damage, putting Berkenbile down to 7. Hold up the Adanto First Fort activation as well as that unbreakable formation.
Yeah, so Yoast made it the second night off the history. There was that attack for 8, Berkenbile to 7, Yoast to 23. See that he was holding on to the Lord in his hand.
Banaush Marshal.
Banaush Marshal, no reason to deploy that.
Yeah, it would have dealt an extra 4 points of damage, but in this white base aggressive deck, we don't have burn to clean things up. What you might see here, and I want to do this before it happens, there's a chance a Gates of Blaze happens here, and then in response to, okay, well, it doesn't happen. But if Sam had cast Gates of Blaze here, and then Yoast responds with Unbreakable Formation, Berkenbile, with the Expansion Explosion in hand, can copy Gates of Blaze with both things on the stack still, and the copy of Gates of Blaze will actually sweep the board before the Unbreakable Formation resolves. Sam Berkenbile instead just goes Archway Angel, gains a bajillion life, and the game continues.
Yeah, 2 for each gate he controls. Looks like 7 of them, plus 14 life, so I believe 21 the new life total as he passes back to Yoast. 3/4 Flyer is a kicker on that effect as well.
Yeah, it's unbelievable amount of life gain that this Archway Angel can produce alongside things like Circuitous Root. It's easy to see why people are starting to gravitate towards this Nexus of Gates deck. Once the ball gets rolling, it's so insanely powerful, and it just plays a different kind of magic. If you're a huge fan of Elder Dragon Highlander / Commander, I think that this is the type of deck that you will definitely want to get your hands on in this standard format.
And we got to Chapter 3 on the history of Benalia. And remember, Yoast has that Dauntless Bodyguards at night, plus those 2 night tokens. Those are all 4 power creatures for the duration of this turn. And he's going to pre-combat making a Johnny Adversary of Tyrants. Thinking about pumping up the Bodyguard and the Sentry. And that is what he's going to do. +1/+1 counter on both of those creatures. And here's an attack with everybody.
Yeah, Sam's going to probably trade here with something like the Dauntless Bodyguard, since that can potentially protect the Snubhorn Sentry. It's going to take a pretty hefty amount of damage, though. Even at 21 life, 4 from each of the Knight tokens, 4 from the Snubhorn, that's 12. He's all the way down to 9. And then 2 more from the Vampires puts him down to 7. So even if he blocks this Dauntless Bodyguard, he's all the way down to 7 life right now.
And that's where he was at the previous turn. It's possible he just has another Archway Angel and is just totally fine with this sequence.
Yeah, I mean, that's the strength of Archway Angel. It resets the game, you know, and in this scenario, the resetting of the game is going to be a little bit different after next turn, though, because Austin Yoast no longer has that Chapter 3 of History of Benalia coming again next turn.
And the block ended up being on Knight token, so Berkenbile dropped to 6. Yoast is up at 26, and we're back on Berkenbile's turn.
I guess the Knight having Vigilance was the reason for the block on it. I was wondering why he blocked that as opposed to Dauntless Bodyguard or Snubhorn Sentry, but it makes sense. If you get to a spot where Gatebreaker Ram becomes a real issue, then having a creature with Vigilance on the battlefield is a bit more annoying because it can both attack and block with your Gatebreaker Ram.
Plaza of Harmony is the land for Berkenbile. Won't draw a card off the Guild Summon. Will gain him 3 life. He's at 9, and here is another Archway Angel.
Yeah, plus this is just so much life to deal with from the Azorius aggro side, effectively dealing 40 to 50 points of damage this game just to close it out.
Yeah, at 23, there will now not be any History of Benalia pumping this turn. Berkenbile slightly ahead of where he was the previous turn.
Yeah, but this Banaush Marshal that Austin Yoast can play from hand this turn, or even just playing the Unbreakable Formation, both these cards quite good at the moment. My gut actually leans, if you're going to just tap out for the next few turns, my gut's actually leaning towards playing unbreakable formation, which Yoast agrees with, because if your opponent does hit you with the Gates of Blaze, your shields are down, and if you don't have creatures on the battlefield, then your unbreakable formation doesn't do anything at all. Plus, your creatures gain indestructible during this combat step, which means that the Archway Angel cannot block and survive, and sorry, can't trade with anything, can't kill anything.
Yeah, the Ajani pumped up the vampires, and now there is unbreakable formation. Cast on the main phase for Addendum, +1/+1 counter on all the creatures. As you mentioned, indestructible during this turn. Here's an attack with everybody. They're vigilant as well.
It's also important for Austin to hold back the Banash Marshals, because if he is at some point able to get an emblem for the Johnny Adversary of Tyrants, it's possible that he can use those Banash Marshals to double pump those 1/1s and really stack up the damage.
Angel held off one of the vampire tokens there. Everything else connected. Berkenbile's at 8. Yoast is at 32. And we're back on Berkenbile's side. He has 3 of those Archway Angels in the sideboard, so might still be one more copy hanging out.
Oh, found a red card off the top. Is it the Gates of Blaze? If it is, I have to imagine it's getting cast this turn to clean off every creature in play.
Yeah, no shortage of gates on the battlefield. Up to 8 now with that Celestial Guild gate. The deck typically rarely shy on using Gates of Blaze as an actual just full sweeper.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a Wild Growth Walker survive before, and that's a bit scary, but, you know, happens sometimes.
Berkenbile will start by using the Angel to attack a Johnny down to 3, and there is Gates Ablaze. He also respond by using his Bodyguard to protect his Sentry, though the other creatures, they're going to go away.
Yeah, and that's why I was arguing for blocking either the Snubhorn Sentry or the Dauntless Bodyguard earlier. You prevent the same amount of damage, you're still trading, but you take away that ability for Austin to protect himself a little bit from that Gates of Blaze. And I think Sam Berkenbile is realizing exactly what just happened.
And that Sentry, that's still a 5-power creature. It has 2 counters from the formation and the Ajani, and it just, you still have the City's Blessing. That's still 5. Hydroid Krasis is going to be the play for Berkenbile here. X equals 4. He'll gain 2 life to 10 and draw 2 cards.
It's pretty funny, actually. Think Berkenbile has that third Archway Angel in hand. Chose not to play it this turn simply because he can gain more life next turn, especially if he's able to pick up something like Circuitous Root.
Here's Beneless Marshal for Yoast. He'll use the Ajani to pump that and the Sentry. Attack from the Sentry. It's a 6-power creature now. Berkenbile's not afraid. He'll go to 4. Dauntless Bodyguard post-combat. Believe protecting the Marshal. Back on Berkenbile's side.
Dauntless Bodyguard protecting that Banash Marshal here. Confirmation from the judges. And that's going to be pretty key if Sam Berkenbile has another copy of Gates of Blaze here. Or it looks like that Lava Coil hanging on his hand might be there to protect it from that as well.
He'll start with Celestial Guild Gate that draws a card off the Guild Summit. Conveniently, his Hydroid Krasis has exactly as much power as that of Johnny has loyalty.
Yeah, Johnny not long for this world. Let's see if Berkenbile can clean up the rest, though. He is at 4. But he might have just the necessary requirements to get the job done.
Yeah, there was a growth spiral. Puts another gate. Draw 2 cards off of that. Here's an attack from the Krasis. There goes a Johnny. And it's Lava Coil is what he's got here. Targets the Marshal. That'll get the Bodyguard.
All right.
And here is another Archway Angel. It's the last copy, but it's good for a lot of life.
Yeah, looks like 10 gates, going to be 20 life. Not bad.
Yeah, just casually above his starting life total.
Yeah, not only that, but Austin has dealt roughly 50 to 60 points of damage this game. You know, it's just a really impressive showing from the Gates deck, how it's able to rebuff all of this combat from this hyper-aggressive Azorius aggro deck.
And here's another Beneless Marshal for Yoast. These creatures are pretty good attackers, as the Sentry and the first Marshal, the one with the counter, do come across. Berkenbile is going to go ahead and chump away the Angel on the Sentry.
Yeah.
Take 5 off the Marshal.
Berkenbile, I believe, has another Gates of Blaze in hand. Basically just looking to provide the highest life total possible before cleaning up the entire side of Austin's side of the battlefield.
Yoast had an Adanto Vanguard post-combat. Berkenbile is going to start his turn by attacking the Krasis. Yoast at 28, and here is Gates Ablaze. Yoast will pay 4 life to protect the Vanguard. He's at 24, but there go the other creatures.
Yeah, and a follow-up here for a 7/7 Hydroid Krasis. I can't imagine that this game is going to go on much longer.
Yeah, and Yoast has in fact seen enough. These players are going to go to Game 3.
Yeah, no relevant cards in hand for Austin Yoast. Just a Adanto Vanguard facing off against a 7/7 Hydroid Krasis, and that's all she wrote. These players are going to shuffle up here and get ready for Game 3. But while they're doing that, I don't know. I guess we'll talk a little bit about the matchup, right? Those Nexus of Gate versus Horus Aggro deck. I think we've gone over the sideboards already, and I don't think much is going to change. But since Austin realizes there's so many creatures coming from the Nexus of Gates deck, including Hydroid Krasis, he might actually go back and bring in those Baffling Ends as a way to deal with Gatebreaker Ram, as well as those giant flying jellyfish whatevers. I forgot what the...
Hydroid Krasis. Yeah.
Hydra, jellyfish... something.
Oh, the creature types. I have no idea. The Simic, they're out of control.
Okay, but Baffling End potential option for Austin here. As for Berkenbile, I think his deck really showed what it could do after sideboard there with all 3 Archway Angels coming down, gaining him roughly 60 life. And we saw it was just a little too much for that Azorius aggro deck to handle.
So we are watching some Standard action this weekend. We've actually been talking a lot about Standard over on StarCityGames.com, and if you want some highlights from everything we publish there, go ahead and subscribe to the Star City Games newsletter, your source for Magic the Gathering news. Highlights from some of our best articles, dates and locations for upcoming SCG Tour events. Find out about invitational qualifiers near you, so you can qualify for the Invitational at SCGCon. We have SCGCon Summer coming up in June here. Find game nights. This is all at go.starcitygames.com/newsletter. It's free to sign up for, so there's really no reason not to.
Yeah, I mean, unless you hate Magic and or Brian Gottlieb. In which case, you know.
Yeah, Brian will find out, too.
Oh, yeah. No, we have a list, and if you ain't on it, you're dead to him. I actually got to do commentary last week with Brian G. when Jerry Thompson called in sick, and a great guy. You know, I did a team Grand Prix with him and Jerry last year in Vancouver, or was it Toronto? Whichever one's near Michigan. I don't know.
That's going to be Toronto.
Toronto. There it is. He's an all-around great guy, and I'm really glad to be working with him here on the SCG Tour. Man knows what he's talking about when it comes to Magic, and it's no surprise why him and Jerry are having such success with their The Game podcast.
I like that Jerry called in sick, but also just showed up to the tournament.
Well, when you don't feel good, you don't feel good, but you can still come and see your friends. And he was already in the area. He had showed up like a week early to hang out with one of his good friends, Joshua Cho, longtime mainstay here on the SCG Tour. Haven't seen him around too much lately, but the man's got some chops. He's got some top 8s as well as a Pro Tour top 4 finish.
Yeah, really powerful pair of mages there.
All right, looks like both players here are taking a look at their opening hand. Let's see if both players keep 7. Some really impressive stuff from Austin last game. Just an insane amount of damage output, even through those 3 Archway Angels. The game was very close, and if Sam Berkenbile hadn't drawn the second Gates Ablaze to clean things up, he could have been in some trouble. With that said, Guild Summit's an insane Magic card that allows you to draw a card whenever you play a land, basically. And it becomes no longer difficult to find the important cards in your deck when every land says draw a card when you play it.
This Nexus of Gates deck, it is a really funny one. You're playing a bunch of Guild Gates, which generally are worse than things like Shock Lands and Buddy Lands. You know, your lands always enter the battlefield tapped. And the payoff is you're paying this 3 mana and this 6 mana uncommon that looks like it's probably only good in draft, but it's actually just a very good standard deck.
Yeah. And I think that the guild-based mechanics are all a little pushed, and I think that that's okay because we've tried it once before in the previous Return to Ravnica format, and it just wasn't quite there. It was barely even limited playable. The only real constructed thing that it had going on was Maze's End, which was one of the most boring, awful decks to play against in history. But, yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I think that all the stuff going on in the Nexus of Gates decks is pretty healthy. even though it can look a little degenerate at times, the Sacrifice is playing a lot of very mediocre cards.
Speaking of mediocre cards, turn 1 play in this game was Snubhorde Sentry for Austin Yoast. Turn 2, Dauntless Bodyguard, and just no attacks. Berkenbile with a Gruul Guildgate into a Celestial Guildgate. Now we're on to Yoast's turn 3. He does get to a connect for 2 with the Bodyguard. And here's History of Benalia. Here's some powerful cards.
Right, and I think that Austin actually sequenced it this way because he wanted to get full value out of Dauntless Bodyguard, understanding that over the course of the game, he's going to get to do a reasonable amount of damage. Just needs to make sure that he gets full value out of Dauntless Bodyguard.
Turn 3 for Berkenbile is a second Gruul Guildgate. He's tapping some mana, I believe Lava Coil being looked at, trying to figure out the target.
Yeah, there's actually a pretty reasonable question on what to target with Lava Coil. I think Dauntless Bodyguard is a good choice because it eliminates Austin's ability to have a choice at all. At the same time, you get 2 power off the battlefield, including a Knight.
Yeah, so the Bodyguard, it is down back on Yoast's side. Chapter 2 of History of Benalia, now up to 2 Knight tokens. Checking some math, see if maybe he could get the City's Blessing pre-combat. He falls 1 permanent shy, but the second History of Benalia is definitely powerful.
Right. So this 2-point swing here doesn't represent much damage, but next turn, with the History of Benalia coming off, is threatening a significant amount. The problem with that is that Berkenbile has a Gates Ablaze. He's casting right now, cleaning up this entire side of the battlefield, and you really are seeing the power of one of the best payoffs that the Gates deck has to offer in Gates Ablaze.
And even got to play Breeding Pool tapped there. And now on Yoast's side, Chapter 3 of the first history, that's no good for anything. The other one will make another Knight token, so he has a creature on the table now. Adds a Skymarch Aspirant to deal with it.
Yeah, Austin's draw a little wonky this game. Has an Unbreakable Formation and a Venerated Luxon kind of stuck in his hand right now, as well as a Conclave Tribunal that he's been waiting to use. No permanents played from Berkenbile other than lands. That Conclave Tribunal not doing very much of anything.
Back to Berkenbile, he's going to cast a Circuitous Root. No Guild Summit this time, but finding 2 gates from your deck. Still a pretty powerful effect.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the backbones of the deck because it allows you to just get a raw, large amount of mana onto the battlefield. So on turn 5 or 6, you just get to start casting hit after hit after hit.
Simic and Izzet Guildgates found. Plaza of Harmony is the land for turn. He'll gain 3 life. 19 is the new total.
Yeah, and Austin here gets the Chapter 3 from the History of Benalia. Gets to attack for 4. Going to follow that up with a Venerated Luxodon, but you know, it's not that much. Like, Berkenbile is still at 15, even after taking multiple attacks here. Plaza of Harmony really showing exactly what it can do.
Yeah, then saw Yoast held back the Aspirant so that he can convoke his Loxodon here. Back for Berkenbile, another Plaza of Harmony. Just gaining that life right back.
Yeah, it's crazy how much life this deck can gain between Hydroid Croesus, Plaza of Harmony, and even Archway Angel. It's just so much over the course of the game for any of these aggro decks to really handle. And as you can see, the payoff cards like Hydroid Croesus as well as Guild Summit, drawing so many cards just make it so difficult for these aggro decks to finish off the game.
Yeah, there was a Croesus for 6, 3 more cards, 3 more life. Berkenbile was at 18. Yoast finally gets to use that Conclave Tribunal, then gets to come across for 10 points.
Yeah, and that does put Berkenbile down to 8, but with an Archway Angel in hand, as well as Gatebreaker Ram as a blocker here. Looks like we're going to have quite a high amount of life to work with, as well as 2 blockers.
Yep, Ram, Island, Angel. Pump up the life total here. Looks like 5 gates. 21 is the life total. Yoast has a lot of work to do here.
Yeah, I know our spotter is getting a workout. We gained 3 from Plaza of Harmony. Gained 10 from Archway Angel. You know, oh no, the Plaza of Harmony. Hydroid Croesus, you know.
Life total is just going up, down, every direction, every turn.
Yeah, and that Gatebreaker Ram right here is currently a 5/5, Vigilance and Trample.
A 7/7. It's plus gate from a 2/2.
Plus gate.
Yeah, it actually, that's a really powerful interaction with Gates Ablaze.
Right, duh.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I actually talked about that last week on at SCG Baltimore.
I like that turn of phrase, plus gate, plus gate.
It's not bad.
Yoast is going to play a 5th land here and just going to convoke his creatures onto another Venerated Loxodon. Needs a little bit more beef to fight through that ram.
Yeah, it is a big old boy. 7/7 is quite a lot.
And it just gets bigger all the time, too, which is another problem. There's a forest for Berkenbile, and here's a huge Hydroid Crisis. X equals 8.
As you can, when I say the Gates deck plays a lot like a Commander deck, you're starting to see what I'm talking about. It has a lot of really expensive cards, as well as a lot of medium to cheap cards that are very synergy based with the rest of the deck. But the payoffs scale so insanely well. The Archway Angel gaining 10+ life, Hydroid Crisis drawing 4 cards, gaining 4 life, and presenting an 8/8 flying body. It's just so much for decks like Azorius Aggro to handle.
And remember, Gatebreaker Ram also has Vigilance. That came across for 7. Yoast is at 13. Now he actually has to be concerned about losing the game from here.
Yeah, I think that there's a very real chance that Berkenbile made a misstep not attacking last turn with the flying Archway Angel. It could have potentially allowed him to attack next turn with the Hydroid Crisis and the Archway Angel for lethal. And at 25 life, it would have been very difficult for him to actually die.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
But we're playing it super safe, and I'm never against playing it super safe when you're this far ahead. You need to pick your battles. This is one where I'm okay not attacking because you're so far ahead. It doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, having an extra blocker probably not going to be too bad, and Yoast needs to clean up a lot of stuff for Berkenbile to start worrying about losing the game.
Right, and with only 2 mana up, Austin can't even afford to gang block the Gatebreaker Ram and cast Unbreakable Formation. So just getting whooped on all fronts here. Sam Berkenbile in complete control in Game 3 between these two 6-0 decks.
History Benalia was the play for Yoast. All he could do that turn was make that Night Token, and we're back on Berkenbile. Thinking about what he wants to commit to the board on top of what he has, thinking about which creatures to attack with. Now that everything is untapped, the Ram looks a lot worse as an attacker.
Oh, absolutely, but it's still quite large. And after drawing some cards last turn, I have to imagine Sam likely has another gate he can play to pump it even higher.
Here's a Guild Summit.
All right, we're going to tap some gates here to draw some cards, and this is the triggered ability when it enters the battlefield. Kind of the less important of the two halves. When I first saw the card, I actually thought it was by far the most important. I think over time, once you first cast Guild Summon, you realize casting on turn 3, and then every land you play for the rest of the game is this cycler basically is so important for this strategy, and you're seeing the front half of it being important here as well.
Here's an attack with that 8/8 Crisis, and I believe Gatebreaker Ram coming across as well. The Angel hanging back again. Player's going to check the size of the Ram. Looks like 6 gates now, so it's an 8/8.
Yeah, I mean, if he just double blocks with a couple of Venerated Loxodons, one has a counter on it, he can trade 1 Venerated Loxodon for the Gatebreaker Ram. I like that trade if I'm Austin Yoast, and I don't know if that was a super smart attack from Berkenbile. With the Gates Ablaze in hand, he could have potentially cast it pre-combat, which would have cleared effectively everything on Austin's side as well as his own Archway Angel, but left him with 2 creatures surviving barely and able to attack for potentially lethal damage.
Yeah, so there is the double Loxodon block. Berkenbile is going to play Growth Spiral. This is interesting. It's a little pump spell as he puts in a Celestial Guildgate. It's a 9/9 now. And is another Growth Spiral? All right, Yoast has seen enough. All right, so if you don't know what happened there, Growth Spiral lets you put lands in at instant speed. Gatebreaker Ram, size equal to your gates +2. So just casual, draw 2 cards, +2/+2.
Yeah, not only that, but just in the middle of combat, kind of acts like a mini giant growth. And just Austin's seen enough. He's losing both those both of his Venerated Loxodons, not even dealing with a Gatebreaker.